Okay, let's continue here, and in a few days we'll start learning the dinim of purim. Anyway, what happens if raw meat, cold, falls into cold milk? Okay, now what's the difference between cooked meat and raw meat? Cooked meat is softer. So then it's more of a problem of the milk going into the meat even though it's cold. But raw meat cold raw meat that falls into cold milk, you rinse it off 3 times, that's the halacha, you rinse it off properly 3 times and it's allowed. Now what happens if there's holes in the meat? Okay, for whatever reason. So that's a machlekes. If the whole meat is not kosher, or washing it off very well is enough, and the halacha is that if you rinse it off very well, that's what most opinions say. If you rinse it off very, very well, even though there's holes in it that maybe the milk became absorbed in the meat, it's still fine. Now, what happens if there's raw meat, but it's full of spices on it? Now, spices also softens the meat. That's the fact, it softens the meat. So again, the halacha is the whole meat also, but again, the halacha is that you rinse it off very, very well and the meat is kosher. What happens if it's roasted meat, cold meat, but was roasted or baked or cooked, it doesn't matter. So you cooked a piece of meat, it's cold, and then it falls into the milk. So the din is, again, because the meat was cooked or roasted or whatever it was, baked, the meat is softer. So therefore the milk goes into the meat, and then you have to do what's called kadei klipa. Remember, you have to cut off a thin piece of the meat in the place where the milk touched, and then the meat is fine. The milk is 100% kosher, because the milk didn't take any, it's cold. So the milk didn't get any of the meat. But the meat, because it's softer, got a little bit of the milk, and therefore it would be a problem.
So if it falls into a pot of milk,
you
have to do kadei klipa on the whole piece.
And if the whole piece falls into meat, if this whole piece falls into meat, you'd have to do klipa all around. It's interesting. Somebody asked me a question from one of the classes that we're having the other week. It's an interesting question. I mean, it's a cute question. What happens if you have a parva cake? Okay, I don't know what it is, because Nathan called me, somebody asked him the question. So you have a parva piece of cake, okay? And you mamish parva cake, and you smear cream cheese on the top. Okay? So now, obviously, the top is dairy. But what happens if you cut half the cake, from the bottom? Is that cake parv?
It wasn't cooked with it, right?
No. Somebody took a cake and put cream cheese on top. So then it's obvious that only the top is dairy. You can cut off, the bottom or whatever, half or 3/4 of it, and then it's 100% parv. Because the cream cheese didn't go anywhere. Or if you have...
a sheet, when they make cakes, they cut them and they layer them to put the cream in between and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm talking just a piece of cake. Or what happens if you have, let's say, a bagel? I mean, hypothetically, you have a bagel. And you cut it in half and you smear cream cheese on the bagel. And then you want to cut off, technically, the bottom of the bagel that's not touching the cream cheese, technically is parv. If you heated it in, let's say, in a toaster oven, or you toasted it like that, then obviously it would be all dairy, because the heat makes the cream cheese go down. But like this, it wouldn't be an issue. Okay, okay, that's not so again. Okay, next thing is like this. Because Basar v'cholav is a very unique din. And in fact, let me just, soon coming to the Pesach season. Pesach is stricter than the whole year. Why? I'll give you a simple example. And before Pesach, there's a mitzvah bedikas chametz. You have to search for chametz. There's no thing in your house searching for pig or searching for treif. Why is there bedikas chametz and not anything else? So the Gemara says, because chametz you eat a whole year. Treif you never eat. So therefore, it's something you're anyway separated from the whole year. So why do you have to do bedikas pig? But chametz that you're used to a whole year, so therefore we have to be stricter because you might forget it's Pesach and you'll come to eat chametz on Pesach. Meat and milk is also a very unique thing. By people, milk is kosher, meat is kosher. It's not like treif and kosher. Milk is kosher, meat is kosher. Yet you put them together, they're treif. They're not kosher. So because of that, Chachamim made certain dinim of meat and milk stricter than anything else. Because again, in the kitchen you have meat and you have milk, and you can come to mix them together. So Chachamim made a few strictnesses that don't apply on everything else. For instance, you're not allowed to eat milk and meat at the same table. You can't sit at a table, and we'll soon details with this, but you can't have meat here and milk here and eat either the milk or the meat. Why? Because again, you'll forget you're eating the meat, and all of a sudden you'll take a piece of cheese. I don't know what you'll do. You'll do something. So in Shulchan Aruch it says that they have to, you're not allowed to eat at the same table meat and milk together. Even two people, this is very relevant in a cafeteria or in a school. People that know each other, two friends sitting at the same table. One is eating meat and one is eating milk. They're not allowed to sit next to each other. If they're close enough that they can reach into each other's food. They're sitting like at the opposite end of the table, that even if they stick out their hands, they're not going to they're not going to reach the other person's food, then it's fine. Why? These people know each other. I'll give you a simple example where you see this. Kids in school, yeah? One kid will bring a salami sandwich, and one kid will bring a cheese sandwich. And they have snacks, so kids that know each other will start sharing. Give me a piece of this, give me a piece of that, and they'll end up eating meat and milk together. So even adults, by the way, you're not allowed to sit at the same cafeteria unless you do things that remind you that you should mix the two together. For instance, they may have to what's called a hecker. Like if they're eating on two separate napkins. In fact, they're eating on two separate napkins. Or each one's eating out of their own bag. Or they put something in between them that would remind them not to mix the two together, so then it's fine. What?
So if you have like a typical big round table in the kitchen, let's say, and one person's eating meat and milk on one side, and the meat on the other side, is that okay?
Only if they can't reach each other.
Only if they can't.
But again, all you have to do is put down a napkin, and then you have a noticeable thing.
A napkin on the
Yeah, or either way, you have to do something to remind you that you shouldn't mix. Because that's the whole, it's only, again, because meat we have, milk we have. Nobody's going to, halachically, you're allowed to sit next to somebody eating not kosher, and you eat your sandwich and let them eat their sandwich. Because anyway, you're not going to go and take his food. But meat and milk, which a whole year we have meat and we have milk, so you can come to mix up, God forbid, and it's biblically forbidden. So therefore, Chachamim said you can't eat at the same table with somebody unless if you either make a sign, a notice, not a big, either eat on separate placemats, separate napkins, or each one eats out of the bag, in any way that shows they're eating separately and they won't come to mix the foods together. Another thing, the lechatchila, Chachamim said you shouldn't put meat and even if it's cold, meat and cheese touching each other. I'll give you what this example is. Let's say you have in a refrigerator, you want to put meat or you want to put milk. So if each one's in a separate container, then they're not touching each other, or a separate bag. But let's say you're just putting down a piece of meat in the fridge and a piece of cheese in the fridge. You have to be very careful that they shouldn't be touching each other. Because even though we learned that if they do touch each other, all you have to do is wash it. Remember that we learned that before, you just have to wash it, but you might forget to wash it. And then you'll come to eat a little bit of meat and milk together. Another din is as follows. Because bread is something eaten with meat and with milk, it's parav, you're not allowed to make dairy bread and you're not allowed to make meat bread. How to make meat bread, I haven't figured out yet. Let's say instead of water, you use meat gravy. I don't know. Huh? What?
Lard.
Lard. Yeah. Lard is not fleshik. Lard is tray for fish, no?
No, lard is pig fat.
Pig fat is what? Okay. Okay. It's not for it's tray for me. Okay. But you're not allowed to bake dairy bread. Now, why? Because again, a person eats bread with meat and milk. So when they'll see this bread on the table, he won't know that it's dairy, and he'll eat it with his meat meal. Or if you have a meat bread, he'll eat it with his dairy meal. 1 second. So therefore, if you make it, you bake it in a different shape, than normal bread looks like, that will remind people that it's taka different. It's not parav. It's dairy. That's why, Moshe, you can have a cheese Danish. Yeah, why are you allowed to make a cheese Danish? Maybe you'll eat a Danish with meat. Because again, the answer is a cheese Danish. You can see it's a cheese Danish. It's noticeable. So then it's not a problem. What?
If you have like a pizza bagel.
Huh?
Pizza bagel.
Now what? Is dairy?
Pizza bagel.
Yeah, but a pizza bagel, you have cheese. It's not the bagel is baked with cheese. You put the cheese on top, no?
Yeah.
That's a different story. Here we're talking about the bread is baked dairy. Like instead of water, flour and water, you put flour and milk.
Usually croissants are baked with butter.
Croissants could be butter, and there could be ameitzi too.
That could be a problem, because sometimes
Croissants can be a mighty.
What?
Croissant can be a mighty.
A croissant that's made with flour and water is ameitzi.
And if butter,
Instead of water,
There's almost very little water.
there's mezainis. Yeah, there would be mezainis, unless if you eat a lot of it.
they put a ton of butter.
Again, if there's more butter than water, then it's liquid, then it's mezainis. If there's more water than butter, it's hameitzi.
So you have to ask Sports Bakery if it's flour and water and croissant.
There was a time they were saying all the croissants were hameitzi. I believe they still are, I don't know. But yeah, you have to ask the bakery, not the guy that, the Mexican in the back that's, or behind the counter. You have to ask the mashgiach, or, one of the from people that work there is this hameitzi mezainis. It could very well be hameitzi. Remember years ago, Schwartz's Bakery's croissants were hameitzi. There were times they were mezainis, then they became hameitzi. It's all these, Okay. Machet shinus am meisen mer mach mein kim shvela gal teda. Genan me kashe me dat gedwoch dak so wie gegeven am